All right, I'm here once again with Feardragon. Just believe it or not, right after the last interview, I know it's super weird.
Wow.
Amazing, right? But anyways, this time we're going to talk a little bit less about Austin specifically and more about your life as a caster,
Hmm.
your thoughts on the general WCS system, all that good stuff. So this is actually kind of what I'm most excited about. Now I know you pretty well, but I still find it interesting to hear an elaborated, vocal thought process. So first of all, last year was your what I would you would consider your big break, right? Like getting
Yeah.
a WCS gig is usually everyone's big break, regardless of like other offline events they've did because it's WCS,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's a pretty big deal. What were your thoughts on getting Valencia, and what were your thoughts on continuing to do WCSs into this year?
Well, you were. It's kind of funny because you were there when I actually got the
Yeah,
offer because I was in Korea. Actually, I was not even in Korea.
you just
I got a
landed.
message from the person who handles all the talent hiring at Blizzard while I was on an airplane to Korea because we were going there to visit Oli Moly and like watch Pro League
Yeah.
finals that year or something.
No, it was GSL. It was last
GSL?
year.
Okay, yeah. Oh yeah, sorry, it was
Right.
GSL. So I like get the message and I'm like, oh yeah. And he's like, oh okay, do you have time to chat or something? He doesn't say like what it's about or anything. It's just you have time to chat. I'm like, oh sure. And I was planning to go and hang out with ZombieGrub anyways because I think we were going from the place you were at then
Yeah, my
to
my apartment.
yeah, and then we were gonna go to like my hotel room or something that was closer to the GSL
Yeah,
studio
something like that.
later on. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go hang out with Zombie Grub or something. So like I end up sitting in Zombie Grub's little apartment. She's like sitting on the bed and stuff. And I'm like with my headphones on, I'm like, oh my god, this is like insane. So yeah, I was it caught me off guard. It was kind of unexpected. But it was really cool. It was really awesome.
Yeah, I know it was. Actually, I asked you about this year too, but I want to hold up a second and say
Yeah.
that we've had discussions, and I've had discussions with other casters about, what makes you think that how to say, like, what propelled you, do you think, into getting that job? And then we talked a little bit about, how asking people is sometimes like
Yeah.
frowned upon, just straight up being like, hey, I'm interested in this thing, but I'm not saying I deserve it, but like, if you could check me out type of thing. You've always been pretty good about actually communicating with people. Do you think that's been a very big reason as to why you've gotten involved in the system, or do you think it's more
Mhm.
about the hard work, dedication, like doing so many events, or
Yeah.
what?
So my dad is still disappointed in me about this, but like, sorry, that's a weird way to start things off. My dad is
Okay.
disappointed. No, my dad always used to tell me, and he still tells me to this day. And he's like, "You still don't do it enough." Was like, if you never ask, you'll never get it. And like, it's made me realize so much of the time in life that people are actually willing to give you things or give you opportunities or chances, but it's not even like a disrespect thing. They just like don't think of you or it doesn't come up
Yeah.
occur to them or anything. Or maybe they think sometimes like, oh, maybe you're not interested, maybe you're not
Yeah.
available. Like, oh, Feardragon, he's working full time. Like, I don't think he's interested in trying to do a big event or like trying to get into that stuff. So like just asking, I think, makes a big difference. I think we've talked a lot about this. Like there's a
Yeah.
line that you walk though where you don't want to be like every day like, hey, so got any of those WCS gigs for me anytime? I'm like,
Yeah.
every single day it gets kind of wearing, but yeah, it's walking the line.
Yeah, but you think that was a big reason as to why, like, you introduced yourself as someone who was available?
I don't think I would have gotten. I don't think I would have been on the radar at all if I hadn't at least asked or like mentioned myself.
There you go. That's a pretty strong statement. But then you go into 2018, and now you're doing another event, and maybe another one in the future, right? Did you expect that? I mean, what were your thoughts on your Valencia performance? What were your thoughts on the last, almost a year
Yeah.
since your first gig, right? And growing as a caster, and then coming into Austin now. I know I'm like maybe making you nervous right before
Yeah.
your first cast. My bad. But
No, it's
but
fine.
yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've talked to you a lot about this, and I've talked about it publicly a few times. But like I'm not someone that has a whole lot of self confidence, I would say, in like my casting or a lot of that stuff. So honestly, I wasn't gonna be super surprised if I didn't get any opportunities. Like obviously it's nice, but it kind of feels a little weird to me at the same time. Like I'm not gonna try to like tear myself down right now or anything. But I definitely have had times where I realize that there's more to casting than just like how good you are at casting.
Yeah.
It's something. It's funny because I realize this a lot about my normal job, which is software development stuff. Like because I do interviews and I've hired people and all that kind of stuff before, so I know that if there is someone that is really freaking good at software development but I don't really like them very much, or they're just kind of like whatever. And there's one person who I'm like super friendly with. We just seem to get it, and we are on the same wavelength and everything. And they're maybe okay at software development, but they also seem like they have good work ethic and stuff. Then I'm like, I want not even a question. I want to work with the person that I'm gonna get along with, and I'm gonna be spending so much time with every day. Like I want to work with a person that also has good work ethic.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I absolutely agree. But then I think a lot of people, a lot of like pessimistic people would listen to this and be like, oh, so it is about like all who you know, which sometimes is like the golden rule of networking.
Yeah.
Like you should network and you should get to know people. And then for other times, it's like something that they use against you. Like, oh, you only got that job because you knew someone.
It's a portion of it. It's not the entirety of it. Like, obviously, if you're absolute garbage, like I think I could, like, personally, I rank myself like there's garbage, and I'm kind of like crawling my way out of the trash compactor right now, or the recycle. I'm like recycling right now.
Oh wow.
I'm not quite garbage, so like, you know, I'm
better for the environment a little bit.
I'm a little bit better than trash, but not quite there. So like, I think there's definitely some degree that it helps to have that networking and stuff. But it's not the entirety of it. But there's, I think it's important to acknowledge that it's not the entirety. It's not like a pure meritocracy. Like if you talk about esports and playing and stuff, outside of, I don't know, like using the N-word on a stream or something, like, and doing match fixing and getting yourself banned, outside of that stuff, if you are good but you are an asshole, it doesn't matter. You will still be able to make it to the finals. You'll still get awarded money. You'll still be at the top, as long as you don't cross like that very, very fine line. But like with casting and a lot of stuff, it's more like other jobs in life, where I think it's not a pure meritocracy.
Yeah, which I agree, of course. Like, I just think that we have a pretty healthy scene and a healthy way of doing things. But kind of on that topic, recently it feels like Blizzard has been doing a better job about introducing new casters into the scene. I mean, that's kind of why we're here. But then, you know, also in Austin is Rapid.
Yeah.
Who obviously does a lot of just GSLs. It's not like he's a stranger to studio broadcast, but it's his first one. So what are your thoughts on kind of that growing next generation of casters compared to Old Boys Club, but like the older casters who are really set?
It's interesting because we talk about this a lot, and it's funny because I think the public has a very different perception of what it is like to be hired for an event, or like what goes into that, because they will see a talent lineup and they'll be like, why isn't X person here? Why isn't X person there for every single event, no matter where it is, what time it is, or anything? Like, they're just like, why don't we just have these 5 casters for every single event? Like, that would just make sense because they're the best casters, in my opinion, or something. So like, there's people who feel that way, but the way that we'll think about it is kind of, you know, oh, you know, this person's like a mainstay, so they should be getting like all of the WCS gigs, and this person is like, you know, they're kind of on the rotation between this person and like some of the other people, and then there's like the new person that comes in. So like I think we kind of have like in our minds, like we think of it in like roles and stuff. So it's been very interesting to watch, and there's definitely the whole like the new talent and stuff coming in, where it was kind of like you and me last year, and now it's Rapid and Wardy also at Leipzig. So it's been cool and interesting. There's so many complications with it. I think the biggest thing I want to say though is, and like it blows my mind how awesome StarCraft people are, because nobody is ever in any of the cast. None of the casters are like, oh man, I can't believe that person got that gig and I didn't, because I feel like I deserve it. But nobody ever is like that, and I think that's like my favorite takeaway from all that, is like it just shows you that everyone obviously cares and wants to do more gigs, but nobody is ever begrudging or, I don't know, upset with anyone else about getting the opportunities.
It certainly helps that we know most of the people, right? Like, the StarCraft community is not that huge. It's you know, whoever was, you know, a jackass in the past has kind of been cut from the roster, just from the scene entirely. Not talking about anyone specific. But anyways, we're like, now that, you know, if someone does come up, it's usually because they are recommended by the other people. You know, they were like, okay, who do you think is a good caster to look at? And then they'll say it. And then, you know, in the past 2 years, it's really come to fruition. I know 3 years ago, oh my gosh, 2015, I actually don't remember what it was, but we had like Wax and Snoot, and like we did have a lot of people being experimented with. That was probably not
On
the
the
best phrasing.
analyst desks, I
Right,
remember
exactly. But even that was kind of like, I mean, Wax was very interesting, but the other ones have been like pro gamers, right? So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just, I feel like this is one of those, it's one of the I don't want to say few times, it's only been 8 years, but it's one of those times where we actually have like casters getting like, climbing the rungs
Yeah, yeah.
of the ladder and actually getting shots. So I think it's been a pretty cool 2 years, but obviously I think we're a little biased.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a little bit biased. On
Yeah,
that.
yeah. But I asked Wardy this question. I'm going to ask you too. So, we kind of know who the next up and coming casters are at this point. Like me, you, Wardy, and Rapid have all been invited to at least one WCS at this point. So you can say that we're kind of the next generation. I'm going to say that now. We're the next generation.
Wow.
But anyways, but beyond that, I'm trying to think of casters that rise up beyond that, right? Like, I think Rifkin is probably in a lot of people's minds that he might be the next one coming up. But then beyond that, like, is there a growing community of casters? Is there not enough support for those casters? Are we the last, like, bastion of people that were able to kind of climb up? Or do you think that there is still a possibility that in 2 years we could have someone we have no idea at this point in time, but in 2 years we could be casting with them at WCS?
I mean, it's so interesting to talk about because you can say that it's really difficult to come up, but in a weird way, all of us, you, me, Wardy, Rapid had his own kind of interesting history where he didn't come purely from just the StarCraft stuff, but he also did StarCraft a long time ago with GSL. So I almost kind of feel like I'm going to put Rapid on the side for a second, but like the three of us, you, me, and Wardy, have been actually casting for more than just a past year or two. We've been casting, I think, all of us since at least 2011, if 2012, or somewhere around that area for all of us.
Yeah.
And all of us have also sunk not just a lot of time, but we've like been a part of like trying to put together events or like doing all these other things. So we've been doing stuff for a really long time. So it's not easy to come up, and like you can talk about, it's so difficult to like run your own or like to find things to cast and everything.
Yes, yeah.
But at the same time, like Wardy and I, for example, or Base Trade, we didn't just look for things to cast. We just ran our own events, and we just siphoned money. We just bled money, kind of. So in a weird way, I think that it is difficult to come up as a caster and get that start. I still see a couple of people coming up, like Coltarian. I think I know he's most well known for that Avila versus the Riddler thing. But like, if you actually check out his stuff, I think he's actually a pretty good commentator. Falcon Paladin, I think, is also he's someone that a lot of people hear about. I don't know. He's starting to do more of the online like live stuff now, which I think is cool. There's like the Gauntlet folks, although they don't do camera and stuff. So I mean, there's like, I think there are people there. Yeah. But everyone still has like more stuff to figure out, I guess.
Right. And I know we talked about this, but the bridge that's what happened is generally like you do a lot of online casts. Maybe you're invited to a studio gig, like I did the MLG thing 4 or 5 years ago at this point. That was my first studio, and it was terrible, but so be it. It was experience. But now we don't have a lot of opportunities to do these offline things. Go ahead with your point.
I think I almost feel like the replacement for the studio stuff these days is a lot of the smaller lands, like like the Psystorm land or the Cheesadelphia or Kings of the North and stuff. I feel like those are the places. And No Regret is also another good example of someone who he was doing some of the online events. He did a couple of the online events. It helps that he's a former pro, so like that's obviously very, very helpful. But he did that, and then he started doing some of the small events like Kings of the North or that kind of stuff. He did some hosting there. And then he was finally like doing the GSL broadcast. And like I know he was even talking about how he was using Kings of the North or like the online broadcasts and stuff and sending those to like Taste and Artists. Like, hey, like here's some examples. Can you give me some feedback?
Yeah, no, he did a very good job of it. But do you think it's kind of we're talking most about NA scenes, but maybe Europe has a bunch of offline smaller tournaments that we wouldn't really know about.
All the good casters come from NA.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, obviously. But anyways, do you think it's kind of, the job of these smaller events to not just hire the talent that's already set in stone, that's willing to take a pay cut because they just want to hang out with their friends? Do you think it's a good opportunity for them to be the growing ground of the new casters, or do you think that that's too much like an onus to put on the smaller community events?
It gets really weird when you start talking about Ode. Like, I think whenever you talk about whether someone has like they're supposed to be doing something, it gets really weird because I'm a big believer in just kind of letting people like work in sort of their own self-interest to an extent, like obviously without doing super shady tactics or anything weird like that, like, but I think just letting people kind of do what makes sense for them, and if they can get big casters, like, awesome. But I think the reality is, for example, the reason why I was doing the first Cheeseadelphia, the first offline event that I got to commentate, Cheeseadelphia 2, I flew myself out there, I didn't get paid, and I wasn't invited to cast. I asked Joe, hey, I'm going to be coming either way. Can I just hop on the desk and cast a little bit? And he was like, yeah, sure. Then I went back for Cheeseadelphia 4, and Cheeseadelphia 4, I think I didn't, I flew myself out, and I said, like, can I have some compensation? I think he covered, like, half of my flight. And I like, all these Cheeseadelphias, I've just been crashing on the couch of a really awesome guy named Cav, who used to be, like, one of the awesome people for Clarity Gaming and Flipside and all that stuff. So, like, in the Kings of the North, I got only half of my travel paid for. And it's only more recent ones, like the most recent Cheeseadelphia, I'm actually getting not just my travel covered, I'm also getting a little bit more cash and stuff, or like payment, even though it's obviously nothing like the WCS gigs and stuff. So I think that you can still, man, I talked for so long that I can't remember what the
I was like, you're just kind of explaining your growth.
No, sorry. What I was saying is that I think that it's not so much on, like, it's not the job of the tournament organizers to try and give the opportunities for that, but I think that there are tournament organizers out there who are going to be in those places where they aren't going to have money to hire like a Rotterdam in control or something.
Oh, okay.
I think that there are opportunities out there. It's not something you have to like artificially create by saying like it's your job to hire up and coming talent or anything.
Okay, yeah, I think I get your point.
Yeah.
But it is one of those like, they do want the established casters, obviously.
Yeah.
They want the people that like know what they're doing, but it would be a really good opportunity, especially for people that are more local, as NA is pretty big, right? To have those opportunities. So you're right though. It is like you can't just say like, okay, that's your job as to smaller organizers, but it might be something that is appealing. It might be something that's really not appealing. That's like, it's hard to say. Everyone wants in control in the cast, but there's also the few people that are like, no, I want to see this X person that's been doing really well lately.
Yeah.
But anyways, actually I had another question about that, but I kind of forgot it. So I'm just going to move on to the next topic.
Okay, well, don't worry.
yeah, that's how chill this is. Anyways, I guess so like a little bit away from the caster scene and just a little bit more about casting. What do you think makes a good caster?
Yeah. Oh man, it's so funny to see people give feedback to casters, because I think the most difficult thing about giving feedback about what makes a good caster, or like what someone should change to become a better caster, is that I think that there are some things that are just clearly, obviously always going to be true. Like, enunciate better. Sure. That's almost never going to be like a bad thing to suggest to someone, but saying things like focus more on the game or things like that, it's like, that's a preference thing. And maybe that's your preference, and maybe that might even be the majority's preference, but that might not be what the caster wants to be. And especially when you talk about like these big events and stuff where you don't have one or two casters or three casters on a rotation or something, or a small rotation, you have a lot of different casters, and everyone's trying to fit a different role and appeal to different people. And sometimes I think some casters are not always going to be looking to appeal to the majority of people. They're going to be filling their niche of people that they're trying to like cater to. And I think that's okay to have some casters who are doing things and making choices in their casting style that doesn't appeal to the majority of people, or doesn't appeal to a very large group of people. So it's like so weird to try and give feedback on what makes a good caster, because it really depends, what does that caster want to accomplish? Who are they targeting? What do they want to bring to the table?
So that actually leads really well into my next question, but we gotta stop and splice right here. So there you go. Okay, so here we go. We're back into the interview, but you just made a good point about, I forget what up, but
you just made a good point. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, no, something about casting. I don't know, but you were talking about how like what makes a good caster, and then what you want to improve on specifically as a caster. And so I'm going to ask you, what do you specifically improve on? What do you consider is going to make you the best caster, and how do you improve on it?
I thought you wanted this to be a shorter section.
Oh my god, yeah.
Okay, so I think there's definitely a lot of stuff that I've been looking to improve on. There's definitely like a bit of game knowledge. I've never wanted to be an analyst or be someone that actually knows the game super duper well. Like I want to know the game well enough to talk about it, but I think that sometimes my game knowledge is lacking to the point where I start, I guess, digressing from the major points of the game. So that I want to improve on game knowledge and stuff a little bit. I think my enunciation can definitely get a little bit better. I think the biggest thing that I've been looking to improve on is actually just getting a little bit more casual, or I guess feeling a little bit more comfortable around a lot of the other big casters.
Okay.
That's probably been the biggest thing for me is
So chemistry.
it's kind of chemistry. It's kind of more just like my own nerves. Everyone in the WCS caster talent lineup is super awesome and super friendly. And it's purely just in my own head. But what was that face? What was that face?
Just, I'm super awesome and super friendly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were like calling someone out like, "No, not that person." And I'm like, what? No, everyone's really awesome, but it's sometimes like I get in my own head about like, that's in control right there. That's Rotterdam. Like, and I'm not quite myself a lot of the time. Whereas I know, for example, just comparison wise, like I know how comfortable I feel at say like a Cheese Adelphi or something, and I'm like, I know that I'm bringing a very different energy level there.
So recently, I've been experimenting more, being paired up with different casters. Blizzard does a good job of wanting to do that, as I think that's been a lot of caster requests as well, as we want to be paired up with a lot of different people. So I've recently kind of been experimenting with my own play-by-play, which I always hated labeling myself because, especially back in like 2012, if you said you were an analyst and you weren't GM number one, people were like, what even? Now I think that's a title that was given to me, and I'll accept it, right? Like I'm not play-by-play, so there's only one thing I could really be. But anyways, practicing play-by-play, I found it was actually surprisingly difficult. Play-by-play casters are most often the ones accused of not knowing the game, and that has to do with the fact that maybe they don't actually analyze, build orders and day-to-day. Like that's not their job, but they have a different job. But what happens, I feel, when you play-by-play cast is you're supposed to get caught up in the moment, right? So you're not supposed to notice that there's another drop happening on the map that killed 40 probes. You're getting excited. You're like, this is going to be the game-winning move, and then the analyst guy comes in and is like, well, actually, there's 40 probes that died, and you just sit there and kind of look like an asshole, right? Do you think that the best play-by-play casters are the ones that are able to recognize everything on the screen as it's happening at once? Or do you think that dynamic of, oh my god, he's going to win, and then the analyst goes, no, wait a second, is the best way to cast?
So I think the ideal, and it doesn't quite always work out this way, but I think in my mind, the ideal situation is the analyst is building the story of what are going to be the important factors in the game. The play-by-play person is saying, here are the things that are happening in the game based on whatever the analyst was building up. So if the analyst is saying, this game is really like, oh, there's like this proxy and stuff, we're going to have to see, does this person get detection? And then play-by-play is talking about, oh man, he's still not getting detection, or like, oh, the observer's almost coming out, blah, blah, blah. Like, is he going to be able to deal with the Banshee or something? And then once the damage has happened and all that kind of stuff, then the analyst is talking about, okay, was that enough damage? Here's that like kind of situation. So it's almost kind of like, I think it's about building off, like it's something you always hear, like building off of the analyst to an extent. And I think it's turning that, it's kind of weird. It's like you turn the analyst's words into play-by-play because that becomes the focus in a sense.
Trippy.
Yeah, when you talk about like, I guess, drops or stuff that's happening, I actually think that that's part of the role of the play-by-play is because it's like the easy way of kind of drawing the line for me is if there's something happening on the screen that's like visible, I think the play-by-play is responsible for noticing or knowing it. I think both casters are.
Yeah. So how do you? Okay, so with that in mind, like, how do you think is the best way to improve as a play-by-play caster? Is it just about like learning enunciation? Is it about being more succinct with your thoughts? Is it having that chemistry? Is that the most important thing about a play-by-play caster?
It's such a hard question to answer because it's like saying, what do you think is the most effective way to improve at StarCraft? It's like,
it's true.
Well, what part of StarCraft?
That's a good point.
There's the enunciation stuff. Actually, I still do this like just for fun. I'll watch a lot of, because I used to play a lot of Super Smash Brothers and stuff. So I'll watch Super Smash Brothers streams and I'll just raw, like no analysis or anything. I'll just straight play-by-play everything to work on getting my thoughts out really quickly, not even thoughts, but just like not even thinking, just like being able to play-by-play action really quickly with,
Yeah.
because it's just it's continuous action in a fighting game. So that's been helpful for me. When it comes to building off of whatever my like partner says, that's just like I just have to go into a game and like I have to have a co-caster and do it. So it's kind of some of it's I don't have great solutions for, but yeah.
No, it's definitely hard. This is like a very open-ended question, so I'm not expecting you to have the guru answers, right? But I think it is a question that's not asked often, because I do feel like an analyst casters get a lot more credit, unless you're like one of the best. Like Maynard obviously has the voice, Tasteless has the GG, but it's usually like if you want to be respected in the scene, you better be an analyst. Like how do you actually make yourself known as a great play-by-play caster unless you have the God-given voice?
Yeah, it's man. I used to actually really. I feel like I used to be better about this, and I've been working on this a little bit more lately. I used to be really good at talking very quickly, but being clear about what I said. And I think I've gotten worse about it because I haven't been working on that as much. So I've been doing stuff like I've been working on tongue twisters and stuff. I actually learned how I memorized a part of Rap God from Eminem.
That's good.
To help me, that's like my warm-up now.
But that's like a legitimate thing, though. Like, newscasters will do tongue twisters before they talk. So, it's totally legitimate. I actually started, when I was prepping for Montreal, because I really wanted to try hard, I started reading poems and sonnets. And I tried to be, like, dramatic and enunciate very clearly. So I also got into poetry.
Oh.
A side effect.
A little poet.
But I think it's interesting to hear how casters prepare, how they practice, because it is going to be such different answers. So
I prepare by singing rap songs.
There you go. Yeah, that's what we learned today. So to keep this interview short, I guess technically like 30 minutes now, but I'll skip to the last question I kind of have here, which is, and this might get a little emotional, so apologize in advance, but who in the scene has helped you or inspired you or been your role model or given you the advice you needed when you needed it?
I mean, Jesus, who hasn't? I would say I can go back to Day 9, who's pretty much the person who got me into the casting to the level that I'm at now, because I was like kind of casually doing it for Collegiate Star League and stuff. Not even for Collegiate Star. I was just doing it for my team. There was no official correlation between me and CSL. I was just like, I was just going to broadcast the games. And Day 9 was like, just cast 30 days or like every single day, no matter whether you're happy, you're sad, you're upset, your girlfriend broke up with you, you lost your job, you failed the test, whatever. Just like go cast and like you'll get in the swing of things and you'll also see if you actually want to do it. So like Day 9 has been instrumental. In Control actually used to give me a lot of like coaching lessons and stuff on casting. Red Eye has given me like or sat down and like just gave me time. And I even tried to pay him like a coaching session and stuff, and he was like, no, just here, like these are the things I think you're doing well, etc. Smix has been really awesome. Smix, especially even this past like week or two, has been. She's like a. I don't want to say the big sister I never had because I actually have a big sister, but like.
Oh yeah, that is actually kind of rude for you to say, but I'll just fill it in for you. And that she's kind of the big sister of the entire StarCraft scene. Yeah. Like if you ever start doing anything official with the StarCraft scene, you'll probably talk to her and you'll probably realize she's an amazing person. So
yeah, she's awesome. She was actually really helpful the past like week or two to kind of ground myself a bit. I mean, just Maynard has been freaking awesome. Like Maynard, even when I have like slightly depressing tweets and stuff, he'll just like shoot me a message like, "Hey buddy, you doing okay?" And I'm like, "Oh." You have been really awesome, as well as Oli Molly. I've told you and Oli Molly this before, but like I think if I wasn't friends with you guys and stuff, I think I don't know that I would still be in StarCraft still. Like there are definitely times that I would probably not made it through. So
yeah, I mean having a support is pretty important. But anyways, no, but it's always nice to hear. Basically, I mean, I think some people listen to our stories on interviews or what have you about how like, we don't like the term Old Boys Club because everyone's been so nice to us. Everyone's been very just accepting and like they've even fought for us at some points. And they're just like, well, they're just shooting shit. They're just like, because they're in the presence of that person. It's like, no, these things are like, it began as we were fans of these people. And then there's that old saying, don't meet your heroes. But in this case, I've not really been let down by any of the heroes that I was able to meet. Like they've all been really awesome people. So
one last person I want to also give a shout out to. It's like, I'm not really ready to talk about it super in depth, so I'm just gonna say Total Biscuit has also been like really instrumental in like literally everything I do. So yeah. Thank you, Total Biscuit.
That's part I was hoping
Yeah,
it's gonna get emotional.
I'm not really ready to talk about it though.
Yeah, which is fine, but I'll just say that like he has influenced a lot of people. He might have been a little what's the word I can't even think of the word right now, but like in general, Total Biscuit might have had a couple of haters and whatnot, but for the StarCraft 2 scene, for any time that I've met him or anyone I talked to in the scene that have met him,
he's always
yeah, exactly. I mean, he had a personality, right, that did that, but he just was an awesome person that helps out a lot of people. So I think you're gonna hear a lot of that as part of like who influences you. But sorry to end on that note, but yeah, thank you.
Thanks, ZombieGrub. I'm gonna cast some StarCraft now.
Sorry, but yeah, thank you for your time, Feardragon. Good luck casting. I hope you get some really awesome games.
Thank you.
And you can shout out if you want where to find you. Otherwise, not on the WCS desk.
Yeah, Feardragon64 on all social media, and yeah, that's it.
Okay,
I was trying to remember because I used to do the Liquid Ret shout out, like because I want to keep that meme alive, but he doesn't have Liquid Ret anymore. Like the account
okay, it's dead. Gotcha.
Because he changed his name to like Retja or something. So
yeah.
I'm like,
that meme is gone. That's too bad.
There was a new one, but I couldn't remember what it was, so I gave up.
All right. Well, thanks again for stopping by and chatting with me, and I hope you guys liked the interviews. So there'll be more to come very soon. Thanks, guys.